Greetings everybody, and welcome back to the channel if you are returning, and welcome to the channel if you are just now showing up. I'm the Mick, and today I'm going to be going over the Horus Heresy book, Horus Rising. I wanted to do this because I wanted to introduce something other than just basic lore videos for other people who are trying to get into the Warhammer 40K scene, or if you're already in the Warhammer 40K scene and you'd like some literature or don't quite know where to start as far as the books go, because maybe your knowledge is way up here or way down here, kind of giving a review as to what you may or may not need to know going into the book, as well as just a brief summary without too many spoilers, I hope, for the book itself. So be warned that there are spoilers slightly. I'm going to try and avoid them as much as possible. If you enjoy this kind of content, please let me know down in the comment section below, or just give this video a like. If you didn't like it, just let me know why you didn't like it. You can go ahead and dislike the video too. Subscribe too if you want more Warhammer type content, or if you just want regular gaming slash an idiot being an idiot on the internet. That's fine too. So without delaying it too much, let's get right into it. So, from the get-go, most of the book is going to be from the perspective of Loken, who is a captain within the Luna Wolves Legion of Space Marines. He is a captain within the Luna Wolves, and he's kind of semi-new to the position, and we start off the book, they have come to a galaxy that is very similar to ours, where there's 7 planets, there's the yellow sun, and they come across a planet that actually is very similar to Earth and already has an emperor of mankind. Now, they send down basically like a, hey, let's parlay and talk some things out. And it's full of space marines. And immediately after seeing them and talking with them for like 5 minutes, the emperor then kills these space marines. And one thing I do like about this book in particular that you probably won't see in a lot of different things, or you probably won't hear from a lot of stuff, is that Space Marines are mortal. They are able to be killed. You can kill a Space Marine. It's just way harder than just a regular guy. The second time they send people down, they basically get ready with a bunch of ships that are like, hey, if they kill this group, we're gonna fuck them up. And so, of course, they die, and they go down planet side, and they pretty much mop the floor with them, even though they still lose 3 Space Marines. And, again, really kind of shows, hey, Space Marines can be killed. Granted, it's through weird means and super high-powered weaponry and the Invisibles, but still, they can be killed just like anything else. The other perspective that you're going to see from this book is through the Remembrancers. If you want to think of the Remembrancers as like bards slash wartime photographers and poets and things like that, that's exactly what they are. They're pretty much bards that show up, whether they're painters, poets, photographers, or just people who are in charge of writing down series of events and stories, and basically the people who are going to write the history books. That's exactly what the Remembrancers are. They're all from Terra, though, and you can see there's already a huge schism between the Remembrancers and even just the regular military that are on the Vengeful Spirit, which is the flagship of Horus Lupercal. So with all his Lunar Wolves and all his soldiers, they're really, really at a, crossroads almost, or butting heads. And it's not till much later that they start realizing, like, hey, these guys are pretty cool. The main 3 that we really follow for any amount of the book overall is Mercedes, Keeler, and Ignis Carcassy. Mercedes is more of the documentarian. She writes things down, and she actually develops a really strong relationship with Loken, and they consider each other friends, and they kind of confide in each other a lot. Keeler is Keeler, as you'll find out later in the book, and Ignis is kind of just an alcoholic piece of shit. So as the book goes on, they liberate the planet, and start moving on to the rest of the planets in the galaxy that they are currently in. But before they do that, they have an iterator, which is basically a dude who's really, really good at giving speeches. And while he's giving the speech, Ignis decides, I'm going to go into the restricted area of the city. I'm going to get absolutely shithouse drunk, and then gets the absolute shit beat out of him. Why? Because he was basically saying that the Emperor of Mankind is being treated like a god, he's not a god, and this empire will fall just like the empire they just felled. So a bunch of soldiers from the Imperium who actually see him in this area that he's not supposed to be in, hear him talking like this to their commander, and beat the shit out of him. Loken is also really good friends with the Iterator that is followed throughout the entire book, and he's the first one that really brings up the fact that Space Marines are just weapons. And that's a huge thing that Loken, and as you see throughout the book, the other Space Marines are really fighting with. And then later in the book, you also find out that the Primarchs are fighting with that. That either there's going to be a forever war that never ends because all they are weapons, and as long as there's war, they have purpose, and if there's no war, then they have no purpose. But then also, hey, we're still human, we're just very heavily modified humans. In fact, in the book, it even states that some of the Remembrancers are kind of shocked at not just how the Space Marines look, because through their description, their ribs are all fused together, their bones and their joints and their muscles don't quite sit right on a mostly human frame, but they are still human. And you can see even still they have like human desires for fellowship and for fun and for art throughout the book as you read and listen to their interactions. Keep in mind, I read this on Audible. If you do listen to this on Audible, I said read, I'm an idiot. If you do listen to this on Audible, the narrator is actually really good at keeping the voices straight, giving them unique voices that sound very different from each other, and you'll get a pretty decent experience from just listening to it. I know I did. It was really great. I was able to semi-keep the characters, set. However, it is still a bit difficult because they've got some weird names. However, if you do the physical copy of the book, which I also started doing, but big words hurt my brain, in the very beginning of the book, you actually have a list of people, almost like a Shakespearean type play. So if you've got any questions as to who is who and who is what, you can always reference that. So it's not that big of a deal. So they start realizing on this planet that there's weird customs and the people aren't fully accepting the people that literally just rained down from the sky, fucked shit up, and said, you're ours now, you're following our laws, our currencies, our traditions, everything like that. This is where you also start seeing the iteration that religion is no longer a thing, even though now in the 40K universe, everyone considers the Emperor the God Emperor and worship him like a god. That's not the case now. In fact, even the Space Marines are like, no, Big Papa's not a god. He's just a dude, an extremely powerful and damn near immortal dude, but he's still just a dude. And that makes some people super unhappy. That makes other people not very happy. But something, too, during this time is they really start talking about the denouncement of demons and magic and deities and other beings that exist as these omnipotent forces of nature. And that's heavily implied and heavily put before us in that section of the book until they're pushing through these mountains and they hear someone named Samus over their voxes, as well as people just hearing it in general without any type of helmet or vox communications on them. And once they get into this cave, one of the Luna Wolves actually gets possessed by a warp entity and attacks the other Luna Wolves, taking out a few of them before Loken has to kill him, which weighs on him heavily. Now, unfortunately, this does happen in front of the Remembrancers, and a couple of them die, a couple of them are injured, and Keeler actually gets a picture of it, even though she says she doesn't remember it. And she actually does later on end up sending it to Loken in a data tablet thing. That comes important much, much later. So after that, Horus himself actually comes to Loken and is like, yeah, by the way, you know, like, psychers, how they get possessed by, like, the energies of the warp? Yeah, anyone can do that. The warp is a very real thing, and it's a very harsh thing, and there are forces within the warp that will just fuck us up royal. And Logan's like, wow, that's a lot to digest, because for the past however the fuck long, y'all have been telling us that that's not a thing. And Horus is like, yep, that's a thing. There's also these things called warrior lodges, which are, like, if you see, like, the VFW type stuff around, or, like, any of your, like, veterans halls or stuff like that, it's akin to that, but it's for the Space Marines to show camaraderie, hang out, talk, share ideas. And it's a place where rank and file and status within the Astartes or within the Legion itself goes away. They can just kind of hang out. Problem with that is that's from a distant planet, and these people who originally had the warrior lodges were doing so in the name of chaos and doing all these occult things. So now they're banned by the Emperor himself. Loken finds out about this because one of the emissaries that they sent was actually a member of the Warrior Lodge, and he finds his little entry badge. It's basically like a challenge coin, if you know what a challenge coin is. If you don't, Google it. It's a big fuck-off coin with a special design on it. And so he goes because he's invited by one of his close battle brothers within the Legion. And once he realizes that they're not really doing anything super sus besides operating in secret, he kind of bails out, but then also gets a smack to the face because, again, Horus knew about these too. He knew that the warrior lodges were happening and just didn't do anything about them and wasn't planning on doing anything about them, which isn't great. So we fast forward a little bit. There's a planet called Murder, and this is where we really start to see brother on brother violence and legion on legion violence. There's a lot of talk of strategy. This is where the action of the book really starts to come in, and you get to get descriptions, although brief, of Space Marines being Space Marines and just fucking shit up. And they're fighting these giant bugs that aren't Terminids or Tyranids. I've been playing too much Helldivers. You get the gist. But they're not that. And so they're fighting these Megarachnids, they're called, and for the most part, they're kind of getting their shit pushed in until, of course, they figure out how to do things. But again, there's going to be infighting due to the fact of how certain things are handled. This is the part of the book I don't want to spoil too much. That way things are handled, who's doing what, how they're doing it, what legion do you belong to, what colors you reppin', that kind of thing. And you start to see that there's a rivalry. The biggest thing I want to point out here, too, though, is you start to see how much love and respect, especially a lot of the Primarchs have for each other, and why it's so upsetting how and when and why a lot of the things happen in the later books. Keep in mind, this is the first book of 54, so you're not going to go from Horus is a good dude to Horus is stabbing his brothers and his dad in the face. It's a very slow burn. 54 books, kind of slow burn. But you do start to kind of see seeds being planted everywhere and starting to take root. They might not be sprouting yet, but they're definitely growing. Just in the way everything is kind of interacting together. Loken also, now, at this point in time, notices that he has this picture, and he starts to notice a weird, faint image in the back. Because up until now, they've all been told that the Battle Brother either became a beast or was just infected with a severe form of some kind of rabies or some weird virus that made him just go absolutely nuts. And of course, we know that's not the case because Horus told us that. Logan's also been reading books that he got from the Iterator that's like, hey, the warp and shit is real, demons reside in it, you can use magic from the warp, you can use abilities and sorcery from the warp. People are doing it as we speak, and it's not just regular humans that are affected. It doesn't matter who you are. You're gonna get touched by chaos, and not in the fun way. So he goes to Keeler's room, and when he goes to Keeler's room, he sees that some naked dude's coming out. She's butt-ass naked. She's been drinking heavily. She's been isolating herself. And again, this is where you kind of see the love that a Space Marine can have to a human and vice versa. Not in like a weird sexual way, in more of a, I respect and I care about you, and the whole reason I'm here is to protect you and care about you. And they've actually grown really close to the Remembrancers at this point. So she tweaks the images, and he starts to see, like, yeah, that's a whole fully fledged warp being. And he's like, oh shit, like, I need to tell somebody about this. We need to do something about this. And she goes, yeah, sure, cool, whatever. I'm going to stay in my room and keep drinking and keep having sex and isolating myself from everyone. So he goes, cool. Gives her a little peck on the forehead, which I'd love to see, by the way, is just some, like, 5'6" woman and some fucking 8-foot tall dude just being like, okay, love you, bye. Mwah. Because, like, his head has to be the size of her torso. But I digress on that shit. But after he leaves, she takes out a stamped metal idol of the Emperor, takes out candles, and begins to pray and worship this idol, calling the Emperor a god. Not the God Emperor, just a god, and sanctifying him as a god. That's pretty much all I want to talk about and spoil for right now. As far as my review of the book, I think this book is really good if you know next to nothing, or you know a little something about Warhammer 40K or the Horus Heresy, and you just like to get a better frame of reference. One thing I will say for American readers, most of this stuff is from the UK, so it's going to be in meters. It's not going to be in feet by freedom inches. So you might have to do a little like conversion in your head, or get a different perspective, or look up the differentiation of measurements. I like the human aspect of the Astartes, but also the inhuman aspect of them as well. I like to see the infighting, even when it is detrimental. It's nice to see that they kind of do have a brotherly rivalry with each other, and you can actually see them be people instead of anything else. There's no pictures in the book, which is probably why I have a hard time reading it, because last book I ate was If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. That's not true. But point still remains, there's also a lot of imagery of the Space Marines and the Primarchs just kind of wearing mostly regular clothes, at least not being completely decked out in full-ass power armor. And even though it's not a picture, it's still kind of cool to have that mental image of Horus just chilling in like a t-shirt and like armor pants, or like a bodysuit that's like ready to put on his armor if he's got to, but he's not all decked out to the nines. If you checked out this book, or if you want to tell me what you liked about the book, or if you have any other questions about the book, or anything else Warhammer 40k related, please leave that in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching. I know I probably got a little bit of it fuzzy. I actually did all of the listening in about 3 days time, which is not enough time, but I wanted to get this video out there just to see if anybody was interested or liked it, so please let me know. Go ahead and subscribe if you want more of this content, and I'll catch you all in the next one.